Morning. I'm thrilled to be here for a couple of reasons. Number one, you are going to meet a fantastic group of panelists who have really intriguing backgrounds and bring something different to the table in this discussion. Secondly, the topic is near and dear to my heart, as I've spent the majority of my career in talent acquisition or recruiting and managing teams. So the discussion, I think, will be compelling. I do have to tell you I have a little bit of regret because when I knew that I was going to be speaking in a room this large, the first thing I did is I looked up on Amazon t-shirt launcher because I was hoping I could get like a t-shirt cannon and maybe shoot something into the crowd and it'd be like my first big, well anyway. So that didn't work, but I am hoping that instead you will see this as maybe idea launching, where you are going to hear some nuggets from the speakers today that could be pieces you could snatch out of the air and say, how can I take this back to my team and maybe improve something that we are doing from a culture perspective to retain your staff. So the speakers that you're going to hear from, what it is a 5-minute lightning presentation, if you will, from 3 different people, and then we will have a moderated discussion for about 15 minutes. So to introduce your speakers, our first speaker will be Olga Brailovsky, and she is the Vice President for Workforce Technology at Intuit. And that essentially is all of the infrastructure and collaboration tools that they use internally at Intuit, which is a fascinating technology problem because they have 8,000 employees and then it balloons to double or triple the size in busy times. So she has a fascinating workload. Our second speaker is Gary Vonderhaar, and he is the Executive Vice President for Technology and Operations for the processing part of MasterCard. Hails from St. Louis, and he was able to fit us into his busy travel schedule coming in from Dublin and London this week, so we're glad to have him here. Our third speaker is Jan Freddie, and she actually spent 10 years with Google, ended her stint there as head of marketing, and then actually went to work at the White House. She was the chief marketing officer in the US Digital Service, so she has an interesting view on going from private sector to public sector. She's now working as a consultant since the administration change. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Olga to come to the stage and do her first presentation.
Good morning, Interop. My name is Olga Brailovsky, and I'm Vice President of Workforce Technology at Intuit, where I'm responsible for all aspects of technology powering workforce, including corporate infrastructure, applications, security, and care. For those of you who are not familiar with Intuit, we're a technology company committed to powering prosperity around the world for consumers, small businesses, and the self-employed. If you've ever done your taxes with TurboTax, send an invoice with QuickBooks, or manage your personal finances with Mint, you are an Intuit customer. A company is as good as its people. People make up the heart and soul of the company. Over our 34 years, our history, 34 years, Intuit has been committed to focusing on employee as the most important stakeholder, knowing that the highly engaged employees will deliver the highest outcomes for the customers. We have a compelling mission to power prosperity around the world that is larger than ourselves. And to support this mission, we have a set of values that guide us in everything we do. One of our core values is Deliver Awesome, which is all about delighting our customers with experiences they love. We pride ourselves on being customer-obsessed and approach every problem from customer perspective. We have 2 innovation capability models that we use to deliver great results and outcomes for our customers, or what we call customer benefits. The first one, customer-driven innovation, which is all about finding an important unsolved problem, falling in love with a problem, not a solution, solving it well, and creating durable competitive advantage to deliver customer benefits. The Design for Delight, or D4D framework, starts with gaining deep customer empathy and understanding the customers better than they know themselves, going broad to going narrow, generating many ideas to get to one great idea, and rapidly experimenting to ultimately deliver those customer benefits. And we measure everything in terms of customer benefits, not process or output metrics. All of us are expected to use Design for Delight in everything we do, regardless of level, role, business unit, or functional group. And we have Innovation Catalyst employees who are deeply knowledgeable in D4D principles that coach others throughout Intuit. In the last few years, we adopted Design for Delight principles within our IT organization and been able to successfully apply it to a number of large transformational initiatives. Also, we had to rethink how we're organized to deliver better for our customers. A few years ago, we moved from functional org model within IT to a customer-focused model where we have 3 primary customer segments: customer experience, workforce, and finance compliance technology, which focuses on shareholder. Being organized that way allows us to understand customer needs more holistically, better align with our business partners, create end-to-end experiences, and deliver measurable customer benefits. One example that I would like to share with you of customer obsession and Design for Delight is a multi-year program called Awesome Agent Experience that we embarked upon a year ago. We have thousands of agents who use around 400 fragmented, complex, outdated tools to support our end customers, which obviously gets in the way of how well they deliver for our end customers. We started with deep customer empathy, trying to really understand the daily challenges of agents using the Follow Me Homes methodology, which involves shadowing agents as they use the tools and as they take customer calls. Then we tested many designs with our customers, rapidly prototyped to get their feedback, and released early and often to actually learn from the mistakes. The results so far simplified and much more effective experience for our agents, where we have 55% fewer clicks per new order, 4 hours saved monthly per agent, and NPS up 23 points for our telesales agents. It is this approach that not only delivers great outcomes for our customers, but fosters a culture of customer obsession, empathy, innovation, and focus on mission. Thank you very much. Passing to Gary.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Olga. I appreciate it. My name is Gary Vonderhaar. Thank you, Esther, for the introduction. I'm Executive Vice President at MasterCard, and I'm going to peel back a little bit of the technology of MasterCard for you today and talk about MasterCard not just as a technology company, but as a people and talent company. We're in the global payments industry. We, just a little bit of background on MasterCard, operate the world's fastest processing network. My engineers, data scientists, operators, technicians, developers create the fastest processing network, and it makes everyday commerce work across 210 countries. And we have people in the majority of those locations as well, which I'll get to in a little bit about some of the interesting things about managing talent. Our business is changing fast. Faster, in fact, than the industry or the whole ecosystem allows, so same challenges that you all are facing. And I thought today I'd talk a little bit about some of the challenges that the talent faces at a technology company. Things like, how do you grow business knowledge? How do you ensure feedback so people have a career path while they're working on interesting technology? Are they stopped at any point by their managers or stopping the innovation? And how you address recognition, which is key to retaining top talent. I'm going to go through a discussion on people. And like I said, people are what make us the company that we are. So getting these opportunities, taking a look at what experiences we offer them is just as important to us as when Olga mentioned customer experience, we think of that with employee experience as well. It's an interesting time in technology. It's our role as managers, whether you sit here as a manager or an individual contributor, to understand what motivates our talent. How do you deal with all of the different generations of the workforce? How do people adapt to the different technologies? And how does the manager course correct very quickly now to when change is required, and in particular when it's fast change and people can't absorb the change as quickly as you'd like to think. I'll give you 3 thoughts, kind of from easiest to hardest, so just keep this to a few minutes. and give you my technologist tier as opposed to a technology tier. I'll give you the view from way MasterCard sees the most important things with talent, and some actions for you to take with it. One is supporting ongoing learning. Now, I can address this topic very simply from what does it take to get a technologist up to speed with skills. Conferences like this do a great job of introducing you to new technologies and new talent and creating the network. But what I really want to focus on here on ongoing learning is the things that will work for growing a collaborative workforce, growing managers, taking training opportunities that are team-based training, we call them intact team training, that changes the culture of a company. The importance that you put into the computer-based training or the technology training has to be matched with manager skills, manager training, and as a company, balancing the actual workforce demands that we see across multiple countries. So this idea of ongoing learning has to apply not just in one country, but to all countries that we operate. So I leave you with that as the first tier. The second is much tougher, offering challenges and new opportunities. And this may say, well, I like new opportunities and challenges. That would be something that would be really helpful to me. The question I have for you is, are you offering that to your best and top talent that you keep on your teams? Are you offering them the next opportunity that might not be on your team, or it might be on a peer team, or might be across different business lines? And that's where we really address this with active programs. One we call Smart Moves. Smart Moves is where you get an opportunity to try a new role, and it could be from IT to a business role, or business to a different regional role in a different part of the world, to broaden your experience. It's a long-term assignment, and it really becomes your day job. Second one I can mention is Smart Steps. And that's where you spend a few days learning in a different role, and you just spend some time walking in somebody else's shoes just for a few days. That really helps people get up to speed. Lastly, and most importantly, is dealing with failure and how you instill with employees this opportunity to fail and how you react to it. So it's how you recover from failure and how you act on it as a team that requires a massive shift in thinking. It's failure used to be a negative. It really, for technology companies, for our employees, it has to be embedded in the culture. And this idea of a collaborative team that can focus on truly learning while you are winning at the same time is where we really get a match. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jan Freddie. We really did not give Esther a break on the pronunciation of our last names today. We didn't give her any easy ones. As mentioned, I just wrapped up a stint in the federal government after about a decade working in the tech industry. So I'm going to start off with a government document, this one from 1944. The predecessor to the CIA launched the Simple Sabotage Field Manual, which was designed to give tips and tricks to average citizens, employees, managers, anybody who was interested in fighting the enemy. Now, you can find this guide online on CIA.gov if you'd like to read it, and I promise you that while some of it may not seem terribly relevant, there's quite a few behaviors in there that are noted as good methods for sabotage that you may recognize in some of your colleagues. So I pulled out a few of my favorites. Work slowly. Be as irritable and quarrelsome as possible without getting yourself into trouble. Apply all regulations to the last letter. And this is a favorite of mine. Order high-quality materials, which are hard to get. If you don't get them, argue about it. Warn that inferior materials will mean inferior work. As I went through the sabotage manual, I realized that many of the traits recommended for sabotage are actually the exact opposite of the types of behaviors and things that we want to see in today's modern teams. So when you're looking to build a team today, or you're a part of a team, obviously you start with people first. And it's a given that you are finding people and looking for people who are technically competent and have the industry expertise that you need them to have. But there's actually a little bit more that people need to have today, especially in tech, where our environments are always changing, the tools are shifting, and trends are constantly on the move. We also want to find people who are adaptable. And adaptable people are optimistic. They might be realists too, but they're optimists in that they believe that they can actually accomplish something or tackle a big challenge. They're supportive of others around them, because when things are constantly changing and we need to be flexible, we also have to bring others on board and be okay with taking care of each other. They can be stubborn, so incredibly determined to the point that they don't believe that anything they're told is not possible really is true. And they're curious. They always want to get behind the no or the things they're being told they shouldn't do. When you're looking around your organization, you might find some enemies in the way your organization is set up. So I'm going to point out a few of them that if you see, you want to pay really close attention to and try to tackle them. One is the org chart is not the boss of you. If you find that your organization is really obsessed with this hierarchy, who's at the top, not listening to the people who are on the ground, people aren't collaborating, you may have a hierarchy problem in which people are more interested in the pecking order than they are in the goals and the mission and the work that's actually in front of them. A simple trick, if you're a leader of an organization, is whether or not people feel comfortable coming to you with problems. Because this happens a lot in big organizations, especially when things are in transition, where folks don't want to raise their hand and say, hey, something's wrong. Process is not a bad word. This comes up a lot of times in startups, where process is equated with red tape and bureaucracy. You don't want that to happen. Constantly adapting and being flexible and going along with change requires a lot of energy. So what you want to do is build process in place to take some of the stress off of your team. So if there are review processes that you can put in place, really explain the decision-making hierarchy that needs to happen to get important things out the door. You want people to have these things in place and understand them, because it can take some of the pressure off of having a really ambiguous environment. Channel your inner toddler. So for those of you who spend time with little kids, you know that they're constantly testing your knowledge, sometimes of high school physics or basic human biology or the inner workings of dogs and cats. When you tell a little child something, they almost always follow up with more questions because they're learning about the world. You want to keep the same mindset every day in order to keep yourself adaptable and learning. So when somebody tells you no, no because a law says you can't, no because this just isn't the way that we do it, no because no one's ever done this before, you want to quickly follow that no with why. Sometimes you may come up against a hard no, a regulation that you really can't get around, but a lot of times no's are sort of passed around through a tradition of a company or a group of people, and they're not as set in stone as we'd like to believe. A few quick things that you can do to cultivate a more adaptive environment in your workplace. Define values that are really strong and serve as your North Star. They'll help you when things are a little bit muddled and you're not sure where to go next. Postmortem regularly. When you're adapting and being flexible, you're constantly experimenting. That means things go wrong. That's completely okay. You want to document them and share your learnings so you don't make the same mistake twice. Write stuff down. This comes back to the process versus bureaucracy, so you can share learnings and everybody can collectively understand what's going on. Introduce newness, bring in different speakers, test your limits and offsites, constantly read things that are a little bit outside of your domain, keep yourself learning and challenged, and really commit to diversity. Having different people around a table who have different experiences and viewpoints helps to push you so that you're continuously being flexible and adaptable. Thank you.
All right, this is like our Oprah Time now. Couches, it's great.
So comfortable.
Right. Every single one of you mentioned people first, right? It all starts with our talent. And we know that there really is a war for talent. I know that every day. So what is it that we should be doing to retain our top talent and our employees?
So I think in mentioning this idea, I mentioned this idea of smart steps, where you actually have to have a program that you can put top talent in. To mention that as the starting point is wrong. Though you have to back up and say, okay, how do you recognize and define and give feedback to top talent and see them? And much of what the panelists talked about so far, and yourselves in the audience, and even taking this step in this conference, is a great step to say you're curious, you're seeking out new things, you're not just stuck in the old role, you're learning and you're adapting. Now, how do you take that forward? I would say that positions you, but then a program like Smart Steps, where I described it as it's a couple days walking a few miles in other people's shoes. It gives you a chance to look at what your passion is. It doesn't take away from your full-time job. For a few days, it certainly does, but it's not something you have to commit to. So you can see if you like it first, and you can see if if it might be your passion. On the flip side, I like to direct people to it where I see kind of the oil and water effect, the butting of the heads. I'm like, you go spend some time with them, because this is us versus them. And last I checked, we were in the same company, and you want to break that culture down. So the idea of promoting collaboration and a close working environment, it really helps with that. And you only need a few hours of that for people to really see the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to top talent, I usually keep three things in mind. One, there is not one size fits all. So you really need to understand what are the individual aspirations and needs. One of the things that we shifted to at Intuit over the last couple of years are monthly discussions that focus on development. So first, what do they need? Second, top talent loves working on impactful, big, difficult problems. Mm-hmm. So putting them, regardless of their role, figuring out, creating unique opportunities that are suitable to them, and exposing them to other top talent within the organization in different parts of the organization, that's very effective. One of the things we do at Intuit is a program called Action Learning Project, ALP, and we've done several of them this year with top talent on big problems. Like, okay, what does it mean for us when it comes to machine learning, AI? What is the future for Intuit? How can it be leveraged? And doing really deep research, applying some of the principles that I talked about, but exposing them to really difficult problems. And the third thing is top talent loves to work with other top talent, and they get very demotivated by mediocrity. So what it means for you in the audience who are managers, you have to pay attention to top talent, but you also have to actively manage underperformers so that there is not this demotivation factor, because they're going to go elsewhere. They're not going to tolerate that.
Mm-hmm. One of the tactics in the sabotage guide is actually to promote mediocre employees. So that's some good advice.
Get my hands on it.
It's online, CIA.gov. I would say, especially if you're on the talent side and maybe not on the management side, be really honest and forthcoming about what it is that you want out of your career. So talk to your manager about what you want in the next year, the next 5 years, and make sure that dialogue is continuing and that you're not only honest with your manager, but honest with yourself. Because a lot of folks often end up leaving because things that they wanted were not given to them when they actually never told anyone what they wanted or they weren't clear about it. So I would also say that this definitely goes both ways.
Absolutely. So what would you say are some of the emerging capabilities needed in IT that might be surprising? I mean, we're talking a lot about ML and IA and data and security, but I'm wondering about more niche skills or things that might not be a hard technical skill as well.
Esther, I think what you mentioned are fundamentals. They're table stakes. And everyone in this room, we're experts in technology. That's a given. We won't sit at the table if we're not. But then we need to think about skills that are a bit unusual or just emerging in IT. Design thinking, I touched on it in my talk, is one. Empathy from a lot of different perspectives is another one. Also, the skills, like for instance, when it comes to collaboration, one of the emerging roles that we're seeing is the one around community manager. So how do you create your, whether it's team community or spaces or some of this persistent chat threads, and how do you create and combine it all into a very compelling end user experience? I also think it's important to point out is we're not going to be all expected to be data scientists or security experts, but there are some fundamentals that if you're in IT, shame on you if you don't know, if you don't approach your job kind of from the security first mindset or don't understand basics in data. So it's so easy nowadays to self-learn through MOOCs, massive online open courses as an example. So those are some that come to mind.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations where you don't know the topic. And in fact, one of the best ways that I found when you enter a room and you don't know the topic and you're afraid, well, if I open my mouth, certainly I'm going to be the one who doesn't know what I'm talking about, is to ask good, insightful questions and get the dialogue started. And in fact, a good, short, insightful question sometimes looks way more intelligent than a really good answer. And in fact, what I found is if I go in with my answer, as you know, in my position, then it shuts down the conversation. So this idea of active listening and asking questions and creating an environment where at all levels, you walk in the room, you leave your org chart at the door, right? You leave your titles at the door, and you actually are there to collaborate. Starts at the leader and, you know, at the most senior executive in the room and works its way down.
I'd say adding to that, if a lot of your day is more technical and you're spending more time coding, have a real willingness to get outside of the building and talk to your customers, whoever they may be. This was actually a behavior the team that I was on in the federal government was bringing tech talent into the federal government to deliver better services to Americans. And one of the biggest sort of traits that we brought into the government was the strong appetite to engage with constituents and hear directly from them what their pain points were, what they wanted, and not to assume that we had the expertise, that we knew the answer. They are using the product. They are the ones that have the answer. So I think really we should all make a commitment to get out of the building, you know, whether it's on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, and talk to the people who are relying on the services and products that we're building.
And as a technologist, stop referring to your internal partners and and colleagues as customers. Those aren't your customers. Your customers are outside. As technologists, sometimes you're in a position where I'm delivering for my customer. It's an internal audience, right? That mindset of getting out and actually knowing who your customer is a big thing.
One of the things that I know you do at Intuit is you have this Follow Me Home program. Can you just touch on that? Because I thought that was an interesting way to build empathy.
We've been doing this for a number of years. And actually, interestingly enough, Intuit started with Scott Cook, our founder, observing his wife struggling balancing checkbook, and that's how Quicken was born. And this was a birth of Follow Me Homes. And the way it works, and there are different, depending on the customer, we do think about our customers both internally and externally. We literally get out there, whether out there is with small businesses, consumer who are struggling, maybe doing the taxes and figuring out all the complexity, or our internal customers, and I gave an example of agents. And it's literally you shadow them for a period of time. You sit with them. So I did one with the agent, and it was one of the agents in Tucson, and it was eye-opening to see how this person is juggling, so the multiple screens, and I'm not exaggerating, many tools. Just in one call, there were 20 tools. This was about 2 years ago, much better now. And that person that has irate customer on the phone trying to run their payroll for their small business on time, right? And has these problems with the access. And this agent is trying to navigate through different tools to help a customer. That gave me true empathy. Oh my God, this is way worse than I thought. And there are ways you can do this with anybody, right, in any of your roles. And it's very effective. Highly recommended. You don't have to call it Follow Me Homes. Call it whatever resonates with you and feels authentic for your company.
You just described that moment when you're calling customer service and you're really angry that you're not getting the answer you want, and you exhale and say, I know it's not your fault, but I need you to fix this problem.
Right. So just in keeping with time, making sure that we give just a few last idea launches out into the audience. Is there anything that you want to make sure that you leave our audience with in terms of tips and tricks of things that they can do to improve talent retention, culture? Yeah.
I would say regularly get out of your comfort zone, and that can be in a personal capacity or professional capacity. But the more that you are trying new things that you don't think that you understand could do, whether you switch sectors in your job or you take on a new cooking project on the weekend or try new sports, different kinds of things like that, the more that you're forced to get out of the things that you are just accustomed to doing in your routine and your habit, the easier it is to be flexible and go with the flow and adapt to all of the different changes that are going on in the workplace. But it's really a practice to get yourself to be uncomfortable. It's not something we wake up every morning and say, like, how am I going to make myself really uncomfortable today? So sort of schedule in time to do that, and it really does work professional and personal. Like if you start doing that more personally, it folds over into your professional capacity.
Yeah, my advice would be, I think there are many people that call themselves technologists, and you know to varying degrees that is actually scientific reality or perception. The trick for technologists, though, is to get into the mindset of the business, of the customer, of the actual product you're delivering. The biggest thing that hurts me if somebody's feeling I'm this way is if I'm just doing technology for technology's sake, right? Because I love to plug in the wires and I love to write the code and have no business sense. But when you flip that and you get the seat at the table, you mentioned about the seat, and you know what to do when you have a seat at the table and you have context, it brings technologists into a whole different realm. And I would encourage you to get into that environment.
I think there are two things. One is when it comes to talent, especially for those of you who are people managers, but also individual contributors, focusing on meaningful conversations. A lot of times, there are corporate programs, we also use it as an excuse, there is not really a mentorship program. We're kind of over-relying on some of the programs that our HR business partners put together. We all have a power to change this, some on a smaller scale, some on a larger scale. And it starts with meaningful conversations and really trying to get to know your talent, and not just top talent. So that's one. The second one, which we didn't touch a lot on, but when we don't work in IT in isolation, right? We work with our customers, business partners. So how do we all learn to lead effectively in boundaryless way? So ultimately, it's not us versus them. We're one team delivering great outcomes for our customers.
Great, thank you. Hopefully everybody got some great ideas today. I really appreciate the panel for your time and efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.